For 2.5 centuries, Medusa has been echoing in so many ways the deepest parts of our psyche that she is everywhere now, out proliferating even her writhing, snaky locks. She assumes endless variations in culture as she moves through time and spills in and out of our dreams, taking up permanent residences within each of us. And Medusa becomes an emblem or an archetype of a terrible succession of wrongs transformed into power, and for an ending that, however savage, is also, in a mystical sense, a beginning. Medusa lives as an embodiment of monstrosity that is simultaneously beauty, running so deep that you simply cannot turn away. And Medusa is an emblem of the strange, sometimes destructive dynamics of visuality, as in Hogarth's Marriage à la Mode, where everyone under the lamp of Medusa is lost in a paralyzing theatrics of isolation and utter blindness. And Medusa lives on too as a forever apotropaic figure who wards off evil, keeping us safe. We shouldn't be surprised at Medusa's changefulness. It was always there, as if lodged deeply in her mythological DNA. When Medusa emerged from her prehistory of bardic women and men chanting their half-dreamed visions around an ancient fire and was first set down into written form in Hesiod's Theogony, Medusa was a lovely young mortal woman with 2 beloved immortal sisters. Together, the 3 were the Gorgons. And as Hesiod tells it, one day the young Medusa lay down with Poseidon on the soft, smooth, flowering, damp grass. Hesiod is specific about the grass being damp, and in Hesiod there's no hint of violation. At about the same time, around 800 BC in Homer, we find Medusa's Gorgon head, or the image of it, on Athene's shield, as well as the shield of others where it is meant to frighten off or paralyze adversaries. It is the beginning of a long tradition of Medusa's head as an apotropaic image, that is, an image with the power to ward off or vanquish evil. 800 years later, and in Rome instead of Greece, the story has changed as Ovid now tells it in his Metamorphoses. The lovely young Medusa with beautiful hair, Ovid lingers on this detail, is violated by Poseidon in Athene's temple. Rather than punishing Poseidon, Athene punishes Medusa instead, turning her beautiful hair to a nest of writhing snakes for the crime of violating the purity of her temple. The changed Medusa becomes perhaps the loneliest creature in history, with everyone she looks upon, or in other accounts who look upon her, or in other versions still everyone who meets her glance, turning instantly to stone. Instead of imagining Medusa as a monster, imagine looking at the world through Medusa's eyes, the young woman hurt and hurt again, and now surrounded by an ever-growing wasteland of statuary. The American painter Elihu Vedder painted several versions of Medusa, and he wasn't the least bit interested in Medusa's monstrosity, but rather focused on her experience and, above all, on her inward life. Vedder paints the mournful and the beautiful Medusa, with snakes interwoven as lovely ornaments to her hair and forming an adorning necklace. Her turquoise earrings are the apotropaic Egyptian eye of Horus. The earrings add to Medusa's style, beauty, strength, and self-possession. This is a fierce and inward Medusa, but as an apotropaic figure, the eye of Horus is also a poignant prefiguring of Medusa's fate when decapitated by Perseus, Her head will retain its powers, adorn shields and fireplaces, and be the ultimate apotropaic image keeping us all safe. Vedder's image reminds me of the novelist George Eliot, who had a lifelong obsession with Medusa, who appears in some form in most of her novels. Eliot was fascinated by the whole notion of beautiful monstrosity, and in her travel journals, she discusses the Rondinini Medusa as one of the most beautiful works of art she had ever seen. In her notebooks of 1855, Eliot transcribed the lines of art historian Adolf Starr. The evidence of Medusa's astonishing beauty everywhere permeates her myth. Her story is a tragic account of the acute jealousy of the ancient gods directed against all splendor and beauty in mankind. Eliot describes Hetty Sorrel's face as the sadder for its beauty, like that wondrous Medusa face with the passionless lips. In all her incarnations, Medusa roots so deeply in our psyches, we are all locked in a kind of permanent, slow dance with her to the music of revulsion, desire, fascination, and even love. The most interesting and beautiful Medusian dance of all is that of reclamation. Usually with monsters, we banish them, cast them out, drive them into the wilderness, beyond the pale. Stare Medusa down through the ages, not with horror, but with pity and compassion for the beautiful young woman wronged by Poseidon, until your gazing turns to something like love. That is what British classicist Natalie Haynes did in her amazing book Stone Blind, which brings Medusa alive in all her complexity and depth. Haynes' astonishing book is almost my favorite modern incarnation of Medusa as a whole being, almost. But for me, the honor of creating the greatest modern incarnation of Medusa belongs to the Dutch artist Juul Kraijer. If the sublime is, as Nietzsche says, artistic conquest of the horrible, artist Juul Kraijer has given us the most sublime Medusa of all, incorporating into her selfhood itself, converting monstrosity to a profound merging of self and Medusa, finally paralyzing us not with monstrosity, but with beauty and force so raw it transforms our sense of the world and self that would always seek to banish the monstrous rather than incorporate. It claims it. It loves it, and through that, it transforms the monstrous utterly. The apotropaic power of the Medusa image on Athena's shield, keeping us safe, is now an explosion of the whole category of the monstrous, an incorporation, a translating of it into power and beauty through love. The gorgeously horrific and androgynous Medusa of Caravaggio, watching herself at the very instant of her violent death in the reflection of Perseus' shield, unleashes an uncanny hellbroth of composite horrors. The viewer is brought more intimately into the scene by Caravaggio's painting than his Medusa on a very real convex sword, giving the whole thing a level of material realism that pierces the viewer as if we were watching our own decapitation mirrored in the shield of Perseus in the last moment of consciousness as lifeblood pours from our brain. Ramping up the horror, Caravaggio has made such brilliant use of concentric circles, the perfect brass circle of the painted ring, the crown of snakes in their frenzied writhing, creating a second circle around Medusa's head, the circularity of Medusa's head itself, and finally, at the very center, her circular, silently shrieking mouth. So much visual attention and framing converges on Medusa's eyes and wildly gaping mouth, And then there is that snake looking poised to enter right into the cavernous dark warmth of that gaped orifice. That image echoes and resonates in so many chambers of the psyche. The primal fear of snakes, the terrible permeability of our body. This is a painting about violation that drags us right down to the swirling echo chamber of primal horrors. And indeed, engaging the echo chamber of our deepest psyche is what Caravaggio did best in all his paintings. And in that zone and echoing chamber of psychical depths, everything compounds to its contrary. Blink again, and is not the androgynous Medusa stunningly beautiful, the whole image echoing with the darkest side of Eros? And given the astonishing presence of a very real shield in front of the viewer, this dizzying moment of Medusa's dying is also the moment of her rebirthing into her future as Medusa, the apotropaic figure adorning shields and fireplace mantles and keeping evil at bay. Returning to Caravaggio's horrifically beautiful mouth of Medusa and the role of Medusa as life protector, this barely known painting is one of my all-time favorite Medusa incarnations. Go back in time, and it is the village spring that enables more than any single thing for a village to thrive. It is the lifeblood of the town. And here we see a young woman filling her water jug out of the mouth of Medusa. It feels like the image emerged from some strange, wonderful dream of transforming horror into life, into rebirth. It is beauty for ashes. I love this painting with a different kind of lifeblood and sustenance streaming out of the mouth of Medusa. It was painted in 1852 by the mostly neglected American painter William Morris Hunt. And finally, this is Alice Pike Barney's 1892 painting of her daughter, Laura Dreyfus Barney, as Medusa. Laura would go on to become an accomplished sculptor. I'm fascinated by the way the very subject of Medusa energized the painting with an emotional and aesthetic dynamism beyond Barney's usual paintings. There's also a decadent, dreamy feeling about the painting, typical of the fin de siècle 1890s, where Medusa for a while joined the ranks of other favorite femme fatale women. She is monstrous but lovely in her fashion. Given the vastly creative and courageous tenor of Laura's life, I feel like this painting was an unceasing talisman for Laura, for a certain kind of creative verve and energy that I want to name Medusian. All right, I will end here. The next Medusa video will offer further explorations of Medusa in culture. Thank you for watching. If you have a favorite Medusa image from art, poetry, novels, comics, or for that matter, Versace, that you would like me to explore, please mention it in the comments, and I will do my best in the upcoming video. As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference to me.